The 2008 KCB Kenya National Rally Championship has been one of the most competitive seasons on record. Along the way, the thrills and spills had also made it one of the most challenging. The climax to the season was the KCB Guru Nanak Rally, and with the championship position still undecided after 7 rounds, the rally became the most important one of the year. It was especially so for championship hopeful Baldev Chagar. All he had to do on this rally was finish higher than 14th to clinch the title.
I don't know exactly the right term to use, but yeah, we're a bit nervous just to make sure we get to the end. The stages are so tempting to go fast on, so I'm just in a dilemma right now what we should do. But
Lee Rose was lying second, and if Chagar didn't finish, the title would be his.
I'm just going to go flat out and hopefully put Baldy under as much pressure as I possibly can and see if I can squeeze a mistake out of him. But there's a slim chance in the championship, and ultimately he is my teammate, so...
The most prolific winner of the event is Ian Duncan, who has won the rally 11 times. Having won the event in 2007, driving a Toyota Hilux, he would be defending the title this year behind the wheel of a Nissan Patrol. The ceremonial start of each rally is from outside one of KCB's 130 branches. And with the rally being Nairobi-based, the cars headed for the suburb of Buruburu.
I'm pleased to welcome you all to the last and final round of the KCB National Rally Championship, which we are about to flag off here in Nairobi.
The rally was all about whether Baldev Chagar would realize his dream. And as they waited, Lee Rose was amongst the many to wish him luck. The outcome of the rally was equally as important for Farouk Yusuf, sitting in the navigator's seat. If they won, he would be the champion navigator for the 2nd consecutive year. The route was similar to leg 2 of the KCB Safari Rally run earlier in the year, using the same roads but run in the opposite direction. The stages were all based around the Blue Triangle Service Park at Athi, 40 kilometers out of Nairobi. Of the 7 sections, 3 were repeated, covering a total competitive distance just short of 130 kilometers. Having been drawn number 1, it was Baldev Chagar with Farouk Yusuf who faced the stages first. Although they planned to just have a safe rally, once they were on the stages, they were as quick as always, only losing 15 seconds to Rose on stage 1. On stage 2, they overshot a junction, losing 30 seconds, and by the first service were lying 3rd overall.
We wrong-slotted once. I think there was a mistake in our notes over recce. But generally, where it's straight and fast, we're going quickly. Where there's rocks, the brakes are coming down very well. I'm going pole-pole over the rocks, over the ditches, just bringing it clean back.
Lee Rose and Piers Dakin were true to form. They were guaranteed 2nd place in the championship and were concentrating on winning to end the season on a high. They punctured on stage 1, but didn't stop, and with apparent ease were quickest over the opening 3 stages to take the rally lead by 39 seconds.
I've been trying to actually get into a rhythm today, and I can't really find a rhythm, and I'm not driving to my full potential, but there's nobody I'm really racing against, so yeah, I'm not too perturbed about that.
Azar Anwar and Julius Ngigi will be surprised to hear that, especially as they were making every effort to win this last event. The Evo 6 was not as quick as the 2 cars ahead, but Azar made up for this with a smooth and economical driving style. They benefited from Chagar's wrong slot and slipped into 2nd.
I've never won the Guru Nanak and I'd really love to win it. Yeah, we've come to this rally with that intention, but the Boldy and Lee are just so much quicker. I want to keep it clean. I want to keep in there. I want to keep very close to them. So.
On such a fast rally, the Nissan Patrol, in the hands of Ian Duncan and Amo Slatch, was at a disadvantage, not having the power of the others. In theory, they should not even have been in fourth considering the pedigree of the entry, but Duncan's uncanny skill behind the wheel of any car always guarantees he'll be up with the frontrunners. A crew that have proved formidable throughout the season are Anthony Nielsen and Mike Ogwapit. Their role in the last event had not affected their commitment, and they were driving the N10 to the limit. They were in fifth, determined to beat Duncan by the end, which meant they would have to be quicker on the stages ahead.
We took it easy in the first stage just to get the hang of it again. I mean, I was a bit frightened after the row. Looking at the time so far, it's not too bad. If we keep it clean and keep going, then I think, yeah, trying to beat Ian. So
Imran Mogul and Achul Kochar had started 16th on the road, but were driving at a pace that saw them climb 10 places on the leaderboard after only 50 kilometers of competitive motoring. They were challenging for an even better position when they hit a rock, ending their rally with a bent steering arm. Only 30 seconds behind them were Izzar Mirza and Ashad Khan. Izzar is naturally fast, which has been proved throughout the season. But seventh, this early on in the event, was even more than they expected. A major part of Izzar's success has been having veteran Ashad Khan in the navigator's seat, but he was considering retirement.
It's been 35 years since I started rallying. My first rally was the Guru Nanak in 1973 in a VW 1200. If I don't retire on this one, then I'll have to wait till next year, Guru Nanak.
A welcome addition to the entry were Don Smith and Bob Kaugi in a Subaru N12. They are regular ARC contenders, but with the championship concluded for this year, they were keeping their hand in. They rally for enjoyment, and 8th was a bonus. Quentin Mitchell and Sanjay Wasson had been given free rein to push the Evo 7 to the limit on this event, but were held back when on stage 3 they caught the car ahead and with no room to overtake, lost a huge chunk of time. Nevertheless, 9th against the strong crop of drivers ahead was an indication of how competitive they can be. Any mistake on such a short rally would have an immediate effect on the leaderboard. For instance, Sushil Shah and Abdul Siddi had been lying 6th when they went off on a tight right-hander. Although they lost less than a minute, it was enough to lose 4 places and they plummeted to 10th. After 2 stages and 50 kilometers of motoring, Lee Rose was in the lead by 39 seconds. Azhar Anwar would be taking up the challenge and Baldev Chaga was comfortable in 3rd. The KCB Guru Nanak Rally was also the final round of the two-wheel drive championship, which still remained open between Charles Hinga and Leonardo Varese. Hinga's only chance at the title was if Varese didn't finish, and it was not surprising that the group had already decided who would win.
Basically, we're just looking at keeping it steady, keeping it on the road, and not overcommitting ourselves, and bring the car back.
First on the road was the defending champion Jasmeet Chana, navigated by Sudhir Tati. They were the favourites to win, but a puncture in stage 1 put paid to that, and they dropped to 6th. Although they were the quickest over stage 2, their rally would end on stage 3 with a broken ball joint. 8 cars had entered in the category to face only the first 4 stages, amounting to 78 competitive kilometers, and and it was Charles Hinga and Evans Mwenda who took the early lead. Limi Karienye and Kimeli Korea were out of the championship race and had nothing to lose. They were matching Hinga's times down to the second, but if they were to win, they would first have to keep the car on the road. The big news was that Leonardo Varese and Kigondu Karevi were in trouble. A battery terminal had come loose, and they were stopped for 15 minutes. But lateness was generous, and they were still in the running, trailing at the back of the field. Charles Hinga and Evans Mwenda were ahead of Varese on the road and had a tense wait to see if he would make it to the end. They had lost the race with Karienye and had to accept second, but it had been an evenly matched battle.
Yeah, it was a good fight. In the morning we had a problem with power in the vehicle. Actually, we only had a few days to rectify the engine after we had a blown engine in Mombasa.
So you let Limi get away with it?
Unfortunately, or fortunately for him.
Limi Karienye and Kimeli Korea had put in their best performance of the year, and it had paid off, although their winning margin was only 2 seconds. They had entered all but one of the 8 rounds during the season, and winning the last event would set them up well for the year ahead.
Well done!
Basically, we're not pushing at max, though we had 2 of our competitors as well who were fighting for the championship. We were not in to spoil it for them.
Leonardo Varese and Kigondu Karevi did make it to the end, and having had the battery problem, the remainder of the rally had been tense, and reaching the final control was a huge relief. Coming last was academic. It was only as they climbed the finish ramp that they were at last declared the 2008 two-wheel drive champions.
Ever since we started the last section, we said let's take it easy, let everything go well with the car, and let's take it home. Yes, this championship has been so hard. I mean, after 2 years, and just to be here, I'm so relieved.
It had been a close race all year, and the top 3 were the first to celebrate with the victors.
Yay! Well done, a big hand. Leo Varese, Kigondu Karevi, the winners of the KNRC two-wheel drive category 2008.
Leonardo Varese had eventually finished well inside time bar, but for the leading 2, the race could not have been closer. Leonardo and Kigondu had won the championship in only their 2nd season of rallying, and will now be defending it against the same group in 2009. This was also the final outing of the year for the classics. 4 of these older generation rally cars had entered, but whatever the outcome, Aslam and Samira Khan's Escort had already clinched the Classic Car Cup title.
I just enjoy driving, and I really enjoy driving the Escort, the two-wheel drive. It's always fun. You get to get out. And I really don't see why people don't take advantage of it. Where would you get a rally where the roads are closed and you can do what the hell you want? It's really a lot of fun. And two-wheel drive, I think there should be more and people coming in.
For the first time this year, the car let them down, and they were left stranded when the Conrod went through the block. An interesting entry was that of Simon Tyso and Rod McLean, who had flown out from England to take part. They were taking the opportunity to experience the challenge of rallying in Kenya ahead of the 2009 East African Safari Classic.
The idea of today is just to get to the finish. The car's very much underpowered to what I'm normally used to, and so we're going to just use that facility and just get us to the end and just use the experience, just find out, learn the terrain basically.
They put in a superb performance and went on to finish 14th overall. They would be the only classic to finish. the Datsun 180B, driven by Michel Pucherkos and Charles Kiboué, rolled on stage 4, and the 240Z of Romy Bamra and Havinder Jatli retired on stage 3. During the season, only 5 cars have challenged for the Classic Car Cup, with Aslam Khan the clear winner. The leading cars were by now tackling stage 4 in the Matatani Hills. It was the only stage to run on public roads. Watch as Baldev Chaga goes around the next bend to find a Boda Boda motorcycle, whose efforts to get off the road ended in the ditch. The race for the overall lead had taken a turn when Lee Rose and Piers Dakin backed off on the wide loose surface in favour of getting through the section safely. This allowed Azhar Anwar to take the lead, but once back down on the plains, Rose was quicker to regain first place by 33 seconds. Azhar Anwar and Julius Ngigi had thrown caution to the wind on stage 4, but then couldn't keep up with Rose on the flat and were once again relegated to second. Baldev Chaga and Farooq Yusuf were understandably not joining in the front-end race, but were still going fast enough to retain third. They'd lost a minute to the others over the 2 stages. Ian Duncan and Amo Snatch were also losing time to the others, but it was not by choice. They were getting what they could out of the pickup, but the power differential was beginning to show. They were destined to stay in 4th. Anthony Nielsen and Mike Ogwapit were so determined to beat Duncan that they were pushing hard. A blown tyre forced them to stop, but the real time was lost when it took 7 minutes to change the wheel, and they plummeted down the leaderboard.
The guys had tightened too much the wheel nuts, and he didn't have the impact to remove so it took him about 7 minutes, which pulled him about 4 positions backwards.
On the closing 2 stages, they recovered 2 places to eventually finish 12th. With Nielsen dropping back, Don Smith and Bob Kauki moved up a place and then gained another when they overtook Izar Mirza. They were now lying 5th and planned to keep it to the end. Izar Mirza and Arshad Khan had been unable to hold off Don Smith, but 6th overall was a generous reward for what had so far been a strong and consistent drive. With only 2 stages, amounting to 25 kilometers remaining, Lee Rose was once again in command, but still had to stay ahead of Azhar Anwar, who would be challenging all the way to the end. Quentin Mitchell and Sanjay Wasson were becoming more and more confident as they explored the Evo 7's capability, but this was briefly brought into check when they approached the next bend too quickly. Apart from that, the car behaved impeccably, and they put in their best performance of the season, which rewarded them with 7th overall. The pace of the rally had been so fast that Sushil Shah and Abdul Siddi had been unable to recover the earlier time lost, and by the end had to accept 11th. But it was enough to finish 6th in the championship. Of all the cars running, none were more entertaining to watch than Alfir and Faisal Khan in their old Impreza. Alfir is always committed, often asking the car to do the impossible. They lost all but fourth gear to finish 13th, but would have been in the top 10 had they also not been off. As Baldev Chaga and Farooq Yusuf left service for the last time, they only had to survive the last 25 kilometers for the championship title to be theirs. But they were not the only ones with the goal. For Izar Mirza, it was the finish ramp and to give navigator Arshad Khan a great send-off. They did both, and finishing 6th was as good as it gets, their best result of the year. Don Smith and Bob Kaugi continued to chase the leading pack, but they all seemed to have that end-of-term feeling where nothing mattered anymore. Although they beat their earlier times over the stages, the others were also quicker and they finished 5th. Ian Duncan and Amo Slatch matched their earlier times almost to the second, which went to show that they could not have got any more out of the patrol. They finished 4th, leaving the record books alone for the moment. Azhar Anwar made a last-ditch effort to catch Rose. They offloaded what they could from the Evo 6 to make it lighter, and they could not have gone any quicker. But it was not enough, and they had to settle for 2nd, having lost the race by just over a minute.
We left some tires behind, we left our underpants behind, and we put our foot down, but Lee's just too quick. But we tried hard. We were a lot quicker than we were the previous time round, and we was not quick enough.
Lee Rose and Piers Dakin were keeping tabs on Anwar's times and gauged their pace to stay ahead. They were quickest through the closing stages, proving that the Evo 9 is the quickest car on the circuit.
This car is the winner of the Guru Nanak Rally 2008. A big hand!
This was their 4th win of the season and their first victory on the Guru Nanak Rally.
I'm very happy. Everything went really well today. We drove carefully, especially on the last 3. I drove around the rocks and carefully over the rough. Made no mistakes, very tidy, and that's the secret.
For Baldev Chaga, the closing 2 stages could not have been more tense. They still managed to maintain their normal quick pace, not taking any risks. Reaching the final control was the biggest moment of their rallying career, and coming 3rd was icing on the cake. After 13 years of rallying, Baldev had at last realized his dream, and Farooq was the champion navigator for the 2nd year running.
This must be quite an emotional moment.
I didn't think I was going to cry. Unbelievable, fantastic. I have no words. It's amazing.
The Triton team had now been on the podium in every rally of the year.
We'll do the same next year. Number 1 and number 2 will be permanently occupied from January to December.
Lee Rose had won by over a minute, but what was surprising was that the times behind were so widespread. Shushil Shah and Anthony Nielsen were only so far down, having become the victims of bad luck. All the finishers had achieved individual goals, but it was especially rewarding for Randeep Lochab and Rex Omole. Baldev Chaga had eventually won the championship by only 45 points after one of the most competitively fought seasons, which made winning the title even more satisfying.